SpaceX just pulled off something that sounds completely contradictory. They had one of the most successful IPOs in tech history, raising billions of dollars from public investors, and then, days later, they sold bonds. Bonds are basically loans where you give a company money and they promise to pay you back with interest. So here's the head-scratcher. Why would SpaceX borrow more money when they literally just raised billions? Because they have over $100 billion sitting in the bank. $100 billion. That's more cash than Apple, more than Google, more than the entire annual GDP of most countries. This isn't a desperate fundraising move. It's a company so financially dominant they are borrowing money at bargain basement interest rates just because investors can't resist them. Imagine being so rich that you take out a small loan just because the interest is too good to turn down. SpaceX is essentially saying to the world, we are so financially unstoppable that we can afford to play the bond market. This move reveals something massive about SpaceX's position. They're not just a rocket company anymore. They're a financial heavyweight that's reshaping the entire space industry and forcing competitors to scramble. But what's driving this strategy? Why raise bonds right now? And what does this cash firepower mean for the future of space exploration and who controls it? Let me explain what just happened in language that makes sense. When a company goes public with an IPO, initial public offering, they're basically selling pieces of ownership called shares to ordinary people and big investors. SpaceX did this recently, and it was massive. They raised billions in new capital. Then a company can raise more money through bonds, which are formal IOUs. When you buy a bond, you're lending money to the company, and they pay you back at a fixed interest rate after a certain period, like 5 or 10 years. Here's what makes SpaceX's move unusual. Most companies do IPOs when they desperately need cash to fuel growth. They are saying, we're growing so fast we need investment. But SpaceX just did an IPO and immediately borrowed more money, which means they had reasons beyond simple capital hunger. The bond sale suggested they are locking in favorable interest rates while investor confidence is at peak levels, or they're planning something so big they want extra cash on hand. Think of it like getting a job, negotiating a great salary, and then immediately asking your bank for an extra line of credit because you know you can pay it back easily. This is what financial strength looks like. SpaceX isn't begging for money, they're accessing the bond market because they can. And because having massive cash reserves gives them unmatched flexibility to chase any opportunity. Now let's talk about that $100 billion figure because it's genuinely extraordinary. SpaceX isn't just a profitable company, it's one of the most valuable private companies ever created. When they went public, the market valued SpaceX at somewhere north of $200 billion. That means SpaceX's total worth, the valuation, is comparable to some of the world's biggest tech giants. And out of that massive valuation, they've managed to accumulate $100 billion in actual cash on their balance sheet. How did a space company, an industry that's notoriously expensive and capital-intensive, build up a $100 billion war chest? Starlink, SpaceX's satellite internet service, is generating enormous revenue. Starlink has millions of subscribers paying monthly fees, and that recurring revenue is like printing money. It's transformed SpaceX from a company that burned cash on rocket development into one that generates positive cash flow that keeps piling up. So you've got rocket launches generating revenue, Starlink subscriptions creating stable income, and government contracts funding development projects. All that money stacks up fast. The $100 billion isn't just for fun, it's ammunition. With that much cash, SpaceX can invest in anything they want without worrying about funding. So what exactly is SpaceX planning that requires this fortress of cash? The answer is everything. First, there's Starship, the massive rocket that Elon Musk is developing to be fully reusable. Starship is designed to carry 100 tons to orbit and eventually take humans to Mars. The development costs are astronomical. Then there's the Starlink expansion. They are launching thousands more satellites to provide global internet coverage, especially in remote regions. Each satellite is expensive to build and launch. Beyond that, SpaceX has contracts with the military and government agencies like NASA to launch national security payloads and deliver cargo to the International Space Station. They are also working toward human moon landing capability through their partnership with NASA Artemis program. And if you listen to Musk, he wants to eventually establish a permanent human settlement on Mars. To do that, you need to develop entirely new spacecraft, life support systems, fuel production facilities on Mars, and so much more. The $100 billion isn't overkill, it's just the starting budget. Each of these projects is multi-billion-dollar endeavors. Having enormous cash reserves means SpaceX can pursue multiple moonshots simultaneously without any single project threatening the company's financial stability. To really understand how dominant SpaceX is financially, let's compare them to competitors. Blue Origin, Amazon's space company, is privately funded by Jeff Bezos. While Bezos is incredibly wealthy, Blue Origin doesn't generate the recurring revenue that SpaceX does through Starlink. United Launch Alliance, a joint venture between Boeing and Lockheed Martin, is public and generates billions in annual revenue. But they are also saddled with massive overhead from their parent companies, and their older technology costs more to operate. Virgin Galactic is public, but focused on suborbital space tourism, which is a different market entirely. In the traditional aerospace and defense industry, companies like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin have deep pockets, but they are constrained by being part of larger defense contractors with diverse portfolios. SpaceX is unique because they've built a business model where rockets pay for themselves, where Starlink generates ongoing cash, and where government contracts provide additional revenue. They've essentially created a self-funding space company that doesn't depend on any single revenue source. No other space company globally has built this kind of financial engine. Most aerospace companies would dream of having $100 billion in cash. SpaceX has it, and they are still growing revenue faster than almost anyone else in the sector. What does this mean for the future of space exploration and the broader tech industry? First, it means SpaceX can move fast. With billions in cash, they don't need board approval for major decisions or government funding to take risks on new technologies. They can fail and iterate quickly without the financial pressure that would destroy smaller companies. Second, it changes what's possible in space. Projects that seemed impossible a decade ago, like reusable rockets, global satellite internet, multi-planet civilization, are now feasible because there's a company with the cash and capability to tackle them. Third, it means SpaceX can dictate terms to the industry. They can offer launch services at prices that competitors can't match because their cost structure is better, and they have the cash to sustain lower margins if needed. That's already pushing other launch providers to innovate faster or partner with SpaceX. Fourth, this financial strength attracts talent. The best engineers and scientists want to work on problems that matter, and SpaceX can offer the resources to actually accomplish those goals. Finally, it signals to the market that space is becoming a mainstream economic sector. When SpaceX can raise billions through bonds and IPOs, it proves that space isn't speculative anymore, it's investable. And that confidence is going to reshape the entire industry. Let's walk through how bond financing actually works, because it's clever and it explains why SpaceX's move is smart. When a company sells bonds, they're creating a contract with investors. You buy a SpaceX bond that matures in, say, 5 years, and SpaceX promises to pay you interest, let's say 3% per year, plus return your original investment when the bond matures. So if you invest $10,000, you get $300 per year and your $10,000 back after 5 years. Now, the interest rate SpaceX gets depends on investor confidence. If everyone believes SpaceX is rock solid financially, they'll buy bonds at lower interest rates because the risk is lower. If a company is shaky, they have to offer higher interest rates to attract money. SpaceX can borrow at favorable rates because the market has massive confidence in them. They are profitable, they are growing, and they have $100 billion in cash. From SpaceX's perspective, this is efficient. They lock in cheap money now that they can deploy toward big projects. The investors get a predictable return and the security of knowing SpaceX's financial strength backs their investment. Everyone wins. And strategically, SpaceX uses bonds to fund long-term projects without diluting stock ownership. If they issued more shares instead, existing shareholders would own a smaller piece of the company. Here's what this moment reveals about the future of space exploration and technology. SpaceX has transcended being just a rocket company. They've built a financial powerhouse that operates differently from traditional aerospace firms. They have the capital, the capability, and the confidence to pursue goals that seemed impossible just a few years ago. For the broader tech industry, SpaceX's success shows what's possible when you create a sustainable business model around cutting-edge technology. Starlink isn't just a satellite service, it's a cash printer that funds ambitious space exploration. That's the model every ambitious tech company is trying to replicate now. Watch SpaceX's next moves carefully. With this much capital and this much momentum, they'll likely announce massive new projects in the coming months. Maybe faster Starship development timelines, maybe bold plans for lunar bases or Mars infrastructure, maybe deeper partnerships with international space agencies. The space industry that existed 5 years ago is being completely reshaped by SpaceX's financial dominance and technological excellence. Smaller competitors either need to find a niche or consider partnerships, because trying to compete head-to-head with a company that has $100 billion in cash and growing revenue is nearly impossible. The future of human space exploration isn't just about rockets anymore. It's about which company can sustain the longest competition of capabilities and ambition. Right now, SpaceX is winning that game decisively.